All right, so I want to thank you all for letting me come in here and talk and get set up for about 30 seconds there. I just want to say thanks to this community. I think it's a big part of what makes an open source project so good, and I think this particular community does it right. Some things I'm going to talk about today. Who are we at Striveworks, and what are we building? What's Chariot? I want to tell you guys like why we chose Flyte and how we're using it, and some things that we are adding to it to make it better. So who are we? We like to think of ourselves as a pioneer for operational data science, in particularly like two verticals, one being national security and the other highly regulated industries. So by operational data science, what do I mean by that? That's sort of like being able to transform decisions or like business outcomes by using data science, as opposed to just applying it like theoretically or in some fashion like that. And these two particular verticals, that can be kind of challenging oftentimes because the deployments of these things are bespoke, and the environments they're operating in are kind of austere. So, that's where we're kind of charging through and breaking down barriers in those verticals. We also offer consultant services, mostly around computer vision. And I think like most excitingly, and kind of what I'm going to base this talk around is how we're building out our MLOps platform called Chariot, and how we're using Flyte to help that. All right. So what is Chariot? We sort of call Chariot like vertically integrated MLOps. I think like a better analogy is like GitLab for ML. So what we're trying to do is capture the whole life cycle of the ML problem into kind of a uniform platform, and make that accessible to different user groups. So high code user groups and low code user groups. So you can kind of see an example. We have a UI for that more low code user. And then of course we have like SDKs, APIs, other integrations for folks that are friendly writing code. And as you can see here, kind of the goal, be able to explore, label, catalog data. We want to be able to train and serve models. And then sort of what I'm talking about specifically in this talk is being able to run workflows at scale. So using those models to actually affect, business outcomes, like I mentioned before. And for that, we picked Flyte, and we're kind of opinionated about why folks should use that. One of the first reasons we picked Flyte is it fits into our sort of, well, I guess lots of folks' idea that everything should kind of be cloud native, Kubernetes first. Like I said, we plan to, and we are installing Chariot into kind of austere environments. So, that might look like a large scale cloud deployment, or it might like take different forms as well. And as long as we have a standard sort of framework to deploy these things onto, which is Kubernetes, we're in good shape. Another important thing is the multi-tenant architecture that Flyte provides. I think, especially in these like regulated spaces, multi-tenancy is sort of obviously important, where you need to separate users and resources and things like that amongst each other within the same organization. And I think most importantly, one of the biggest reasons we picked Flyte was it is ideologically kind of aligned with what we think all MLOps systems should have, and that's strong lineage guarantees. So you can kind of see in this picture here, side-by-side comparison. So like Flyte lineage, obviously this is just like snapshot from the UI, but you can get all types of great lineage information from Flyte. And kind of combining that with Chariot, you can get sort of a full picture of what is going into workflows, what are workflows using, and what are the conclusions that are coming out of them. All right, so this diagram here, this is sort of how we see Chariot overlaying into like the broader sort of ML ops space. And this picture here, I want to preface, this is not like everything that Flyte can do, because I think Flyte can probably do more than potentially is just highlighted here, but this is like how we are fitting Flyte into our system and where we see it fitting in. So you can see like, if I scroll back here, like obviously without Flyte, we're clearly missing some like important parts here where data orchestration, kind of like how do we get stuff out of this middle phase here of like curating data, labeling data, training data into some sort of like production pipeline that is reusable and extendable. And so you can see like Flyte fixed those boxes pretty nicely for us. Also, you can kind of see it sort of overlays on a lot of these other pieces as well as sort of, a data engineering engine, an experimentation engine. You can train models obviously in Flyte, and then also using that to deploy models to production. All right. So in this example here, this is like perhaps a not so contrived example of how we're using Flyte. So in this particular workflow, let's say we're indexing faces for some like similarity search that we plan to do later on. So like typical workflow, like split video into frames, get detections of faces perhaps in each frame, take those detections, kind of, clip them, get embeddings of those faces, which is like a vector, and then save those embeddings to some, database or state store that is optimized for that, like a vector database or something like Milvus. So I think like this is why Flyte's so important. This is why like we think Flyte is great, is that, in this particular example here, I have deliberately like sort of injected a bad model into this workflow that I showed you before. And you can clearly see like this task here has got no output detections. So this detect faces task has no outputs. And, because of that, the next task in the workflow fails. And so we can quickly see like the way we use Flyte was oftentimes we'll inject model URIs, which are immutable, into inputs. And so we can clearly see like which models were used in this particular workflow. In this case, you can see it's, hopefully you guys can see that like bad face model from Checkpoint. So from that, we can go back into our Chariot system and quickly see like, here's the model that was used in this workflow. Maybe someone is nice and left a comment on it that like this model's no good. Oftentimes that's not going to be the case. And so following that lineage pattern, we can go through here and see exactly like what is the metadata of this model. In this case, like which training run created this model, which hardware was it like trained on, and then particularly like which checkpoint was used to create what we call a model. So from there, you can track it back to the training run. Again, using the lineage, you can get like a summary of like, what is the training data that this model used? What is the validation data? On the right here, you can see some metrics, and I trained this model, so the metrics are absolutely terrible. So you can see that, oh, clearly this is not a good model. So we know that like this production workflow that we used from Flyte, we were able to track down through this lineage all the way back to this training run that I clearly did not do a very good job in creating. So what also I think is really cool with Flyte is that we can simply inject a new model into the same exact workflow that I just showed you, using some model that hopefully someone else trained besides me, and that works and that's validated. Inject that as an input parameter, rerun the workflow. As you can see here, we get like output embeddings, and then hopefully the rest of the workflow succeeds as well. So I think what's it's not necessarily like there's nothing revolutionary here, but I think it like highlights why lineage is so important, and like how powerful Flyte can be with just like injecting a new model without changing any code or anything like that, and being able to rerun and get fixes and into production very quickly. All All right, so I mentioned some additions that we're making to Flyte. There's a few things in particular that we're working on. Right now, I think like making Flyte workflows easier to register is a big thing. I was pretty excited about that roadmap that Katrina teased with. I think one thing we're doing at Striveworks right now is we've created a VS Code extension called Flyte Wingman that sort of makes this easier internally for us. And this will, initialize workflows by creating boilerplate. You can register workflows. You can get code snippet, like you can get like hints in your IDE for generating workflows. So I have a quick video. Hopefully I can share and not ruin my screen share to show you guys. Perhaps. Y'all see that okay?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so here's Flyte Wingman in action. So you can see here, this will just hook right up to the Flyte's API. You can select which project you want to use. You can register workflows. The beginning happens pretty quick. I don't know if you saw that, but we initialized the workflow. We registered a workflow. This will go through all like building the container, PyFlyte steps, the Flyte CTL steps to register this as well. So if there's any interest in this, let us know. We are very open to like open sourcing this and making this kind of readily available for everyone. The next thing we're doing right now is sort of combining the Flyte console with our UI. And a big thanks to like Jason Porter and Nasia for coming up with like a design doc to help make Flyte console kind of accessible to lots of folks through a plugin architecture. So hopefully all of us as a community can kind of work together to make Flyte look and feel the way we all kind of want Flyte and look and feel, and get the same functionality out of it. And then lastly, I think probably most people get the point by now, but like we think lineage is really important. And we're working to extend that slightly within Flyte. So one thing that we've been doing is essentially adding like a sidecar proxy to our workflows, which will basically collect network information and then integrate and aggregate that with Flyte lineage information from the data catalog. And so what you can see here is like an example task that will, or an example workflow that will output. This is essentially the output graph of what that network and Flyte lineage information looks like once combined and into a graph structure. And each one of these nodes here will have specific details that correlate to what is going on. So you can see here, like this is a task execution. You can see that this task is making some requests to our inference server, which is where we host, our models. So you can see that this does something with this model and returns some output back to this task, which then has some output. So really working on enhancing lineage as much as possible. And this is sort of one way we're doing that. That's all I got. It was kind of quick. Are there any questions or anything like that?
Firstly, thank you, Jake, for sharing all of that. That's pretty awesome. I think after you asked if there is any interest, I think a bunch of people said, yes, absolutely. And I think even me, I think we love it. We would love if you could share the VS Code extension. Yeah,
absolutely. Be happy to do that.
Is that written in Python or is that in JavaScript or?
Yeah, so it's all in JavaScript right now. Just VS Code plugin API, but then it'll make some calls to. We try to use the native tooling, so we don't have to like keep up with upstream. So it is just calling like Flyte CTL and PyFlyte under the hood.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's actually calling the CLIs.
Yeah, at times it depends. So like when registering, we use like the gRPC API to like get the project info, but then for like for registering and building, those will just call like, you know, your Podman or your Docker or your Flyte CTL.
Oh, that's fantastic because so the thing that Katrina shared, she did not give a timeline. It's April 15th. A bunch of so we've been completely revamping the register experience and Flyte remote. So you'll not even need to use the CLI. You can directly hook into the programmatic APIs or the friendly programmatic APIs, not even go to the RPC directly. So we would love to work on this because this is, I think folks would love it completely.
Cool.
Yeah, and are you allowing like custom cookie cutters? Like you had showed creating the new project and thought that was really cool, but wonder how that kind of looks on your end.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Right now, we are not using custom cookie cutters. We sort of have like basically the same template that you'd get from the getting started guide from the Flyte page. We just have that templated out, but you know, I think adding cookie cutter templates to that and making those customizable would be totally doable.
Cool, thanks. It looks awesome.
Thanks.
I think if you open source it, I'm sure the community will help make it even better. So love that. Anybody else? Any questions? Any questions about just in general the upcoming roadmap items?
Hello everyone.
Hello.
I am Arvind. It's my first time attending the Flyte meeting and I am here to contribute to the project.
Oh, great to have you here, Arvind. Thank you so much.
You are not audible, Ketan.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, thank you for joining in. Fantastic to have you here. And go through the issues. If there is any help you need, you know, jump on the Slack, ask questions. Don't be shy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, then I'll just give a little bit of a spiel about the upcoming release. We are calling it Flyte 1.0. Again, no alarms. We are not breaking any user code, anything. But one thing is happening is if you want to continue using Flyte, you'll have to upgrade the backend to 1.0. I guess it's not a completely, but any of the new features that you want to use that come with 1.0 will need a backend upgrade. But once you upgrade, it should just work for all the existing stuff. The biggest thing that's getting added is we are reducing the requirement for users to have to get a permission on their side to push their, you know, bundles or code bundles. For fast registration, that is automatically handled by Flyte now after this point. And a lot of UI and other updates and UX update for Flyte Kit. And we are also setting the stage for a lot of fun stuff coming down this year. So we actually want to start doing like a leaderboard of features, and we would love for folks to actually vote and see which ones should get prioritized. So any ideas of where we should host that, how we can get more of the community involved, how we can get feedback about what you guys are liking, what you guys are not liking would be fantastic, and we would love to do that. All right. 20 plus people are silent, maybe more than 20. It's 50. All right. Silence is taken as everything's okay that we're doing. So Katrina, did you have anything else? I'll hand it over to you.
No, I think that was it for today. So I guess we'll see everyone in 2 weeks and see you on Slack in the meantime. Thanks for joining, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.